No. And the first music is not timeless, Paul. It's not time. It was of its own merit, but it wasn't timeless. It's only when I finally got into being comfortable with different recording techniques that I could feel like I could actually put my name personally on stuff. But it was just really necessary because it's weird because when I do photography and I take photos, oh fuck, it's instant. It's just instant. You know you've got the money shot. You look at it, it's like that's definitely the money shot. And sometimes you think, calm down. Look at it, oh yeah, still the money shot. With music, it's because it's much more complex. There's much more going on because you're not actually grabbing a moment. That's what a musician does, right? A musician will actually just grab a moment with something analog and that's how they feel. Photography, even though it's digital for me, is the grabbing of the moment. And then if you grab the right moment, it's like, yes. And with music, it's much, much more complex. So I think it took me a good 5 or 6 years of making music because it's at its most basic technological point at that point. It's not now where everyone can have one of these computers and basically have as much power as you want, multitask, no issue whatsoever. You know, we had to do things like bouncing and ping-ponging and then have to worry about tape speed, noise, signal-to-noise ratio, Nyquist theorem, all of the other stuff, which actually limitations I teach my students is a brilliant thing. We had to break through that. So it's much more complex, but I had to express. And I didn't want to express on some bullshit fucking rave on the M25 with a bouncy castle. I never feel it's an artist's responsibility to self-declare they've made something timeless or a game changer. I think that comes much more from ego. I think the first record that I made that I was the most comfortable with technologically probably would have been something like Directional Force at RNS. I mean, I was really proud of the stuff that I did for Excel, really, because it was like cathartic. Because it also was like, I still exist, you know, even though I sort of stepped away from DJing, I still exist as an artist. I have artistic statements to make. But being invited over to RNS in Ghent, it meant a lot to me. Seeing all the equipment that I dreamt of, seeing an 808 for the first time, thinking actually, Jesus, it really looks like a Bontempi. It's so colourful. I was really surprised by that. All that stuff was like, that was interesting to me. Finally being able to change my voice into a dark voice that they had on all those amazing tracks records from Chicago. Then I started to feel this is really, I feel really comfortable. That record didn't do so well, but it's the record that I feel that was starting to change things. And then I started to sort of A&R and release my own music on Magnetic North, and all the money that I was getting finally from record sales, which wasn't so much, and also plays through PRS, finally, eventually, after battling for it, I just reinvested into the studio. And then when the studio got more complex, then I got more intricate and more involved. And then I realized this is really where I need to be. And then I'm starting to make music that reflects who I am much more than just having, 3 or 4 sample seconds worth of sample memory, for example. And then I felt a bigger headroom to be able to actually just imagine and move things around in different ways. And, I have no idea how music comes to me, and I don't want to. I am the ultimate reverse of all my students. Like, I would say like maybe a fifth of my students are good finish offers, and most of them are brilliant at starting but not finishing. I hate starting music. I just don't like it. It's only when I get to a certain momentum within the music that I feel like it's going somewhere, I feel good on this. Then I get excited. When all the mathematics start to come alive, when the numbers are there in front of you and you see the numbers talking to the other numbers and everything starting to be almost like a Pythagorean theorem. And I failed at maths. I don't want to come here like say, hey, I'm a fucking genius at maths, I'm shit at maths. I really feel that when those numbers are starting to dance, then I start to feel really, really excited and really, really cool. And I have to thank my father in a way for this, because he was so complex with all his musical equipment. He had a spring reverb across the radio so that we could listen in the bathroom on a car stereo speaker with a little bit of extra warmth. I mean, like, who has that even now? No, so that complexity definitely comes from my father. But I don't think Yeah, I think you have to be classically trained. I work with classically trained. Classically trained people go, oh, they've got this, obviously the Beethoven, da 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 da. They have this whole thing of where they can translate musically there. I will just let the computers talk to me by working around inside. And then all of a sudden I get to a sort of momentum and I feel I'm on this now. Everything. But the music always tells me where to go. I don't tell it where I push it and put it in certain areas, but the music will say, I need this. This is where I want to go. And for someone that's really, really analytical, apart from just explaining it to that level, I don't want to know anymore. Yeah, absolutely. I recall so much.
How did it work?
It's one of the good things about not doing drugs, kids, is you remember everything. So I recall everything about that, and having a sampler with minimum amount of memory, and then squashing the bass drum using Nyquist theorem, which comes from the Bell laboratories in the US, because of how to get the most natural sound down copper wires. And if I'm using this bass drum, then I had maybe 2 or 3 bass drums layered on top of each other. But because C-Lab Notator at that time only had a certain amount of polyphony that it would allow before actually freezing, I would then have the one part of the bass drum on 1.1.1, another part of the bass drum 1.1.3, and then glue it all together. So I remember everything. Yeah, I remember being on the Atari. I remember on Sonic Sample. I remember constantly truncating, making the best out of everything, working with Niels in the Exchange, who was a legendary record cutting engineer. And he was looking at me going how the fuck did you do this? And he does his thing and I look at him, how the fuck did you do that? And then, so it was a really symbiotic relationship. And I still remember the first compressor I got was a Lessie 3630, which is really asthmatic compressor. Just really, it's frustrating because you think, oh, well, maybe if I just had shit equipment now, I'd actually still make this amazing music. But, I make different music now because I'm in a different part of my life. And I remember talking to Daft Punk and at the Rex, Thomas was there. He's so what is this compressor things that you're using? And I go, Monsieur said, this is 3630. No, mais oui. And then we talk about that, and then they fuck off with that, and they do their thing, and so I remember everything. Yeah, I did, but I struggle taking things on board sometimes. I don't want to take things on board because I feel it shapes you and it changes your character. So actually around that time, I did the whole Red series at the beginning. So I said, because I was fed up of doing one record here or maybe 2 records on one label, one record here, and it was also disjointed, and it was the first record that I actually put my name to. And I said to the record label at the time, it's well, if we're going to do this, I want to have a series of 3. A trilogy, and so therefore you're going to have to trust me on this. And so it's going to be Red 1 or 3, Red 2, and I didn't realize by doing that, because people really related to it and they loved the whole aesthetics of everything as well as the sound, that by the time Red 3 was coming out, it was really big, and I was struggling because I don't like fame. I don't feel comfortable with fame. I don't want fame. I like recognition by cool people, but fame itself is a nasty... It eats you up from inside. I've seen it with everyone, and that's why there are a lot of people on drugs, because they can't deal with it or they want more. It turns them into that angry beast, a horrible beast. And so I remember taking time out because actually I felt really uncomfortable with what was going on. I was starting to get front covers of magazines, and which is probably nothing now with magazines, but in those days it was the way of information spreading. I used to write for magazines, so I struggled dealing with it at that time. So I didn't recluse. I was lucky enough to be at a time when DJing was in the dark, where you would have 5, 10, 3 or 20 people like this staring at you, not waiting for you to fuck up, just going, huh? And tapping their friend on the shoulder, and everyone else doing exactly what they're supposed to do in a club, which is basically be in the dark, dancing, and just feeling the music. I was lucky it was that time, because I wasn't sort of blah, blah, blah. But then I ended up on BBC Radio 1, which was a bit of a strange thing as well. So it was all very confusing. But that's the whole thing. It's like you don't analyze, you just let it be. By analyzing, it's like, what the fuck do you... You just like, yeah, this happened. Next. Be proud of it, sure. It's not like something you disown. You want it to affect people in a really, really cool way, but I don't sit on that thing because it's not good for the ego. Yeah, I dreamed of because what I didn't explain before is also, I named all the cool things. I named punk, I named reggae, I named new wave, and some of the British pop that was coming through, and of course hip hop, and of course the cool early wave of house. But I didn't actually name classical, and classical did come to me. It came to me in different parts, different stages throughout my life. So I had that, but my father did like some classical music. And he did like to play that shit really loud. So it's not just like, a lot of people have classical music on a radio in the background. It's like while they clean the dishes or they sit and talk or, He was pumping that shit. Like seriously. I mean, these speakers that he carried back from London were in his Citroen and are basically, apparently the front headlights were pointing up because the speakers were so heavy coming back from London. These tannoys were amazing. And he would play Carmen, really loud, all that, and all of a sudden you realise, hey, music isn't just a background thing; it's really a visceral emotion where you can go, and it's like, what the hell was happening? And it's like you're just taken over. It's like the first time I ever heard Concorde taking off when I was on the tarmac. It's one of those moments you'll never forget. It's a do I cry? Do I shit myself? What happens? Because it's a physical change to your body. And then, so I heard classical in that way, and then I heard the more sensitive classical. So, I mean, most people talk about sort of neoclassical, like people like Vangelis, which he was a genius. But my father was playing like weird stuff like Tomita. And Tomita does Gustav Holst or Debussy. And because there wasn't any bass in that thing, it was just a different tonal, textual thing, and that really, really inspired me. I don't think I can do this still. I'm just doing a different version.
You did it.
I know, but it's a different version. It's not like... I mean, I'd love to see it performed by an orchestra at some point. I would love that, especially at Harper in Reykjavik. I would adore that. I would be emotional wreck by seeing that. It would be one of the most wonderful things I could see. But I'm just doing my own version of things that I can do. And it took me a while because at the beginning of my first album, it's a track called Rhapsody in Red. Now, of course, I was a Gershwin fan as well. And Gershwin did Rhapsody in Blue. But because I was known as the Red guy, I thought I'd just fuck with it a little bit, called Rhapsody in Red. It's not a Rhapsody at all in the slightest, but I did that. But that's where I wanted to go, but I couldn't go there because I didn't have the musical training, but I also didn't have the ability through computer power and instrumentation that I wanted to do. But it was the first track on my first album. So it's not such... I mean, a lot of people are going to go, oh, he's a bit hoity-toity up his own bum. He's doing classical music now. I don't respect this. I've always been there as well. Just as I have with the Saga playing punk and weird shit. I just love music. It just opens me up. So it's a natural follow-through for me to do this. I mean, I've got to sign it. It's not signed yet. But I had to wait for the computer power to be there for me to do that. And it just wasn't. And maybe it's a lame excuse, but I can only go with how I feel. And then I finally had the computer power that I wanted, that I could do that. I played live a few times with my own music. And I remember playing, I think, a tribal gathering in the UK. And like I said earlier, I never really feel that comfortable about playing my own music as a DJ that much. I do now, I'm okay with it to a degree. But I had to obviously play my own music because I'm playing live. It came up from here when the crowd cheered, up to here. It was like a reverse whiskey. So like whiskey's like down, and it just went, luckily not there. And it's like, whoa. Amazing. I mean, it was the right time to do that at that time because everyone was really on the case of there. I was scared because Kraftwerk were playing at the same time. I thought, no one's going to want to see me. And it was a small tent. It wasn't like, big, but I played to quite a few people in Sao Paulo, for example, playing live as well. That was special. The thing I like about DJing, because DJing and live are different things, the thing I like about DJing is when I'm just playing music, I'm not thinking. It's instinct. I'm doing stuff with my hands. I'm not telling my hands to do this or that or that. I'm working. My hands, it's that whole thing of like, it's happening, but I'm not in control of it. Of course I am, but I'm not. It just happens. And that's the beauty of it. You just DJ. It's just so natural and so easy, and it feels good. I'm very honest. I'm really, really honest. I mean, I've taught in different places. I've taught in places where I've taught in townships. I've taught in favela. And I've taught in schools where you pay to get in, but there's no entry apart from paying to get in. And I've taught in schools where you have to have an entry level of academia and an ability to get in there. You can't just arrive. It's not like you've paid for it yourself or your parents pay for it. You have to get through that. And right now I'm at that last level where people actually have to get through a certain level of academia to get through. The first thing I always declare is like, well, it's ironic, kids. And I can say kids now because I'm 55, it's cool. And they open the door for me. It's really nice. I get apples sometimes, and I still haven't got my tram pass. But I say kids, it's like, you have to make your own luck. You have to make your own luck by being out there. If you're not out there, it's not going to happen. You don't need to eat. I didn't eat for years. I used to take toilet rolls from hotels because it saved me money. You don't need to eat. You got no kids, you got no mortgage. This is the time that if you feel this, you put everything in. And at the end of it, you might not get nothing back, except that you knew that you gave it everything. And sometimes the world's an unfair place, but that unfairness wasn't caused by you. You did everything you could. And that's what I try and teach. I think it's really, really important, because otherwise, they're a good bunch. Like last year, they really support each other. It's really wonderful to see. They clap after someone's played their tracks. They're cool kids. But I always tell them that the music industry is a very dangerous industry. If someone really wants to sign you up and they force you, that's a bad sign. I haven't signed with my agent. I haven't signed with my manager. It's a trust thing. If someone trusts you and you trust them, you grow together. And that's the way to be. Because if someone says, they see a raw talent and they think, oh, this is putty in my hands, I can mold this and do this, which you see with some DJs, then they're not going to be that happy. And then that's how they end up with drugs and stuff, because they don't know how to verbalize the disdain. And so I try and get them to be really aware. I try and get them to also be aware of politics, because I teach sort of loosely music and politics, and I let them know it's like, politics is powerful if you really, really believe in it, because it can change the world for good. People go, oh, I don't want politics anymore because it's music, shut the fuck up. But let's not forget, with music, it's changed things. It helped bring about the change of the end of apartheid, for example. It helped vocalize the anger about the Troubles. It helped vocalize the anger about Thatcher. Brexit has brought some incredibly angry voices in a very, very brilliant way, where all of a sudden people are talking about society. The early days of hip-hop taught me all about black socio-economic things that I wasn't taught about. Pop music taught me all about how actually skewed the government sponsored curriculum of education was, and not teaching you everything. So I'm saying, like, if you guys feel really strongly about politics and something is really upsetting you about something, then you should have a voice and try to do something with it. So I just try and get people to be alive.